The World Bobsled and Skeleton Championships return to Lake Placid March 3rd to 16th, 2025. Hi everybody, I'm John Morgan. This will be the 10th time that Lake Placid has hosted this prestigious event. 1949 was the first time, 2012 the last, and of course Lake Placid also hosted the 1932 and the 1980 Winter Olympic Games. Today we're going to take a look at the bobsled season to date. We're on Christmas break here, and I'm going to call in my longtime broadcast partner, Martin Haven, who has called every single event so far, almost by yourself, Martin, but if there's anybody to give us a good perspective of the season to date and the people we could look forward to being the top competitors in Lake Placid, it's Martin. Martin, great to have you.
Hey, John, always a joy to talk about bobsled and skeleton with you. I mean, it's a habit we've had for 20 winters plus. So, yeah, always good fun. And I can't wait to come back to Lake Placid. It's such a great track. It's such a great area to come to. And the fans are so enthusiastic. So, yeah, I think everybody's really stoked to get to Lake Placid.
Well, you know, I've been to every one of these World Bobsled Championships except the first one in 1949 because I wasn't born. So it's exciting for me. There's a lot of people like me that were born and raised in that track that really looking forward to this event. The Olympic Authority, as you know, has done a fantastic job out there redoing the facility. When you go out there, Martin, you haven't seen it yet. You haven't seen the new indoor push track on the in the new building, and I mean, just everything out there. The facilities have been upgraded. But hey, let's get to bobsled. So you've been to every event. We started off the season. The skeletons started off in Asia by themselves, in Beijing and then Pyeongchang. And let's talk about men's skeleton. Who do what's impressed you the most about men's skeleton?
Well, there's been almost every one of the 5 races they've had so far has had the same 3 men on the podium. The world and Olympic champion, Christopher Groothaar from Germany, won 4 on the bounce right from the start of the season. Now, he didn't win them easy. It was a few tenths, maybe a couple of hundreds here or there, but he has been battling essentially with Matt Weston, the 2023 world champion, and Marcus Wyatt, his British teammate. So those have been the 3 essentially that have hogged all the medals. Now, the last race, and this was the 5th race of the season before Christmas in Sigulda in Latvia, just before the Christmas break, Groothaar actually pulled up injured in training. So he's got a thigh injury or a calf injury, sort of somewhere in the leg. And he wasn't really keen on pushing it too much. So he went back for physio in Germany and for scans and didn't race, which meant that the 2 Brits were basically carving it up between themselves. And Marcus Wyatt ended up being the first man not called Christopher to win this season. But that sort of, it's slightly artificial that those 2 have been right at the top of the pile, because right behind them, men's skeleton has been an absolute dogfight. So there's probably 10 or a dozen sliders who could feature in the medals. And one of the things about Lake Placid is that it is such a driver's track that it's going to really punish anybody who's not consistent. And so you've got to be on your A game both days, all 4 runs. Otherwise, you're just going to fade in competition.
Okay, so that's a great overview on those 3 guys. Now, women's skeleton, it's not been as tight in women's skeleton. It seems to be like a few more competitors in the mix.
Yeah, there have been 5 different winners in 5 different races, so it couldn't be more different than the men's competition. Every day you turn up, you have absolutely no clue who's going to win. And it's not necessarily the big nations. We've had a Chinese winner in China. We've had German winners, but we've also had the Netherlands and Belgium winning. So Kimberly Bos of the Netherlands, reigning World Cup champion and Olympic bronze medalist. So she's won a race. Kim Marmans of Belgium claimed her first ever victory as well. So she's won a race. So it's a very tight pack. You normally get a little bit of separation, the top 2 or 3, and then from 4 or 5 down to 16, everybody's at it. 100th, 200s, the gaps are minuscule. And again, when you play that out over 4 runs over 2 days, and potentially really quite dramatically different weather conditions over those 2 days, then it's impossible to gauge who's going to come out on top. You look to the experience, women like Janine Flock with 109 World Cup starts, Katie Uhlaender, the hometown queen, with 105 World Cup starts, and 2008 world champion. You know, you've got to look at the women with the experience as being potential winners. But in St. Moritz a couple of years ago, we had a world champion who'd barely done 2 full seasons of World Cup. So of all the disciplines, perhaps skeleton is the most random, and women's skeleton the most random of all.
Okay, so that's the skeleton is set. So let's move on to women's monobob. It's been pretty interesting so far. The same cast of characters at the top. Been some exciting racing action. You know, this is only the 3rd year of the sport, Martin, but it's pretty interesting competition.
It's really maturing, isn't it? The deal with monobob is almost like single formula motorsport. Everybody has access to the same kits. So the sleds are all built by one manufacturer in Bavaria in Germany. So everybody has identical sleds. It's dimensionally about the same as a 2-man sled. So you use the same runners, and often they'll use runners from their 2-seat sled or from the men's field or whatever the nation has on hand. But it doesn't have that push athlete input. So it's just the driver. The driver stands at the back of the sled, pushes the sled, leaps in and drives. So the strong starting drivers, and traditionally those will be former brake women, and we're thinking of USA's Alana Myers-Taylor and Kaylee Humphreys. We're thinking of the likes of Cynthia Appiah and Melissa Lottholtz for Canada and so on. Big, strong start is really important. But they are a bit skittery to drive. There's not the weight over the rear axle that you'd have if you have a brake woman and other athletes sitting in there. So they can be a bit of a handful. And again, Lake Placid is going to be tough to get these things down neat and tidy. And as you always say, John, it's not the driver that drives the most that wins. It's the driver that drives the least. The less input you have to put into the sled to navigate the corners, the better it's going to be. So quarterback scramble style isn't really going to work. You've got to be absolutely precise. And that's going to put a real emphasis on driving ability. I think in Lake Placid, the driver is going to outweigh the pusher in that balance. Obviously, if you're like Kaylee and Alana, you've got both, then, you know, US fans, you should be looking at hopefully a US winner in monobob.
Well, you know, Keisha Love's been doing some great stuff. I mean, Kaylee Humphreys just coming back from the birth of her child. You know, and Alana's got 2 kids she's got on tour with her, like Kaylee. But how about the German athletes? They seem pretty dominant.
Well, they are, and they have good training. They've got good facilities. They get access to a pretty wide-ranging selection of runners as well. So they tend to be in the right place. And certainly Lara Nolte, 2-time world champion in women's monobob, she's got to be a real contender. She's been to Lake Placid enough times. Now, of course, because of 2021 and COVID and all of that, Lake Placid hasn't really been in rotation since before the last Olympic cycle, before 2018. So it's less well known, but these women learn fast, the men learn fast, everybody. It's one of the key things. You have to learn fast. You have to be able to adapt quickly as well. And yeah, certainly the German girls are going to be in there. And particularly in the monobob, the likes of Lisa Buchwitz, you know, she's an Olympic gold medalist as a brake woman turned driver. Boy, she can drive. She's actually got more medals in monobob than anybody else. So she's definitely got an opportunity as well. Lara Nolte is undefeated so far this season. So yeah, by the time we get to Lake Placid in March, the Germans might well be on top of it. But again, you've got to look at home track advantage.
How about that girl from down under?
Well, there's 2 now, but you're right. Brianna Walker claimed her first win ever in the monobob World Cup, as opposed to in different previous forms of monobob in Lake Placid in March. So yeah, no question. She's going to come back absolutely full of vinegar, isn't she? Ready to go again. I know this place. I own this place. Come and bring it on. And she's been on the podium so far this season, so she's got a good opportunity as well.
So, Martin, we've gone through 3 of the 6 disciplines. We're going to come take a quick break here. We're going to do a little promo now on the World Bobsled Championships. Get a glass of water, and we'll see you in 2 minutes. The World Bobsleigh and Skeleton Championships are coming to Lake Placid March 3rd to 16th, 2025. They started sliding in Lake Placid at Mount Van Hovenberg on Christmas Day, 1930. And beyond staging the 1932 and the 1980 Winter Olympic Games, Lake Placid has hosted the World Championships 9 previous times. Only St. Moritz, Switzerland has hosted this prestigious event more. These daredevils on ice will compete on one of the most challenging and historical tracks on the planet, but the track has changed from the 1930s to what it looks like now. Then it was a combination of snow in the straightaways and ice on the curves, but now it is a complete ice canal with athletes attaining speeds over 80 miles per hour. For more information on ticketing along with the full schedule, go to LakePlacidWorldChampionships.com. Welcome back to our preview of the World Bobsled Championships in Lake Placid coming up in March. I'm with my longtime broadcast partner and the voice of the International Bobsled, Martin Haven. Martin, we've covered men's, women's, skeleton, monobob. Let's move on to women's bobsled. Been some pretty good action that first 3 weeks. That stuff in Sigulda, boy. And the men's competition was pretty scary, but boy, that really showed who are the good drivers.
Well, it did. I mean, they were a little surprised by the weather conditions. The track was a lot harder ice, a lot faster than they'd had in training. And if you can imagine that it turns from being a sort of wood floor into a marble floor, then there's that extra lack of grip that the sleds had. Now, in the women's race, because there'd been crashes in the two-man in the previous day on Saturday, and the women's race on Sunday, they didn't spritz the track. Now, spritz is basically a Zamboni. It's a spray of water that gives you a really clear, hard, polished surface to the track, which makes it quicker. So they left it overnight, and it was a little frosty and a little sticky on the runners, which gave you more control. What it did mean, though, is that athletes who went early in the race, and those are the top seeds, had a slower track than those who went later. And so we set our top 3, 4, 5 sleds quite early on, and then the last 4 sleds, boom, 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 they're all there in the top half dozen, whereas historically they probably wouldn't be, given everything being equal. So some of the drivers weren't entirely happy about that, but again, you've got to kind of look at the safety element of it as well, particularly after there were so many crashes in the men's race. And in fact, in the men's race, because it's a 2-man double race weekend in Sigulda, they crashed again on Sunday. So it was a slightly mixed up result, although the same woman won in Sigulda as had won in Altenburg, Lara Nolte, the top German driver. So in fact, the top 3 in the standings at the moment are 3 German drivers, Lara Nolte, Kim Kilicki, and Lisa Buchwitz. But as you said earlier, Kaylee Humphries coming back from giving birth to her son Alden just over 12 months ago. So she's a year behind where Alana Myers-Taylor was last year in getting that physicality back, because they're not just talented drivers, they're absolute push monsters as well. And you can imagine that being pregnant and spending months out of the gym takes that out of you. So they will come on stronger. Alana definitely will. Kaylee absolutely will. And of course, they haven't forgotten how to drive in the interim. So there's going to be all of that mix up going on as well. We've got new US pilots as well. So we've got Keisha Love, who's already been a race winner in her first World Cup season. She knows the track inside out. She could be doing well as well. You've got to look at the Canadians. You've got to look at the Romanians as well, and maybe even the French. I mean, there could be all sorts in the top 10. And again, women's bobsleigh, like the monobob, the 2-seat sleds are really, really tightly packed together. So, you know, any slight variance in weather conditions or the way the runs pan out could throw in some real wild cards.
Great. So let's move on to men's 2-man bobsled. You know, the same cast of characters up there, but you know, with the German dominance, but the British snuck in there for a medal. But what's impressed you about the 2-man bobsled? Anything caught your attention?
It's interesting because last year, halfway through an Olympic cycle, we sort of lost a bunch of some of our top drivers. Now, some retired because of injury, some just retired. and at least one who had retired is coming back. Roman Heinrich of France has decided to start racing again. So having retired after the games 2 years ago, obviously he's bored sitting on the couch or whatever and has decided to come back. So there is a mix going on. As you said, the British Brad Hall has been a real thorn in the side of the German team for the last 3-4 years and is back in almost full fitness and is back in the medals. But it is the dynamic duo, isn't it? It is Francesco Friedrich, the greatest ever bobsledder in terms of absolute results and competitive edge, and Johannes Lochner, his German teammate. Now, they're very different guys, but they get on really well together. They're a great bonding pair. That makes the Germans so tough to crack. Yes, they race each other really aggressively on the ice, but they really do work together off the ice. And then there's maybe the slight outliers, which is not doing Frank Del Duca, for instance, any kind of a service, because Frank is not really an outlier, but he is right on that bubble. 4th place finishes so far this season, top 6 consistently. Put him on home ice, be the start of a fairy tale story. It's a little bit of a strange season because Skeleton started in the Far East. They started with 2 races in Pyeongchang in Korea, the 2018 track. Then they had a race in Beijing, the 2022 track. So they sort of are 3 races ahead of bobsled. And because the second round of the bobsled season was in Sigulda, we've actually had 3 2-man races. So nearly half the season by Christmas out of 8. We've only had 1 4-man race. So calling that is like turning one card and going, okay, I know what you've got in the rest of your hand. So that's going to be a little tougher to call. But yeah, in the 2-man, you've got to look at the Germans, you've got to look at Friedrich, you've got to look at Lochner.
How about Brad Hall? Come on,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is getting fitter and fitter and faster. The German advantage is very slightly the kit, I think. Their equipment always goes well, whereas almost everybody else is customer of a Latvian sled builder or someone else. So the rest are maybe not quite on a par. Interestingly, the new US sleds built in Lake Placid, MUSA sleds, really seem to be coming on strong. The drivers love them. Kelly and Alana both had them for the first time this season. They both love how they respond, love how they drive. I think Frank is the same. He's got a 2-man and a 4-man from Mark Vandenberg built in Lake Placid. So, US driver, US sled on the track where they're built. That could be a great story.
How about the Swiss guys? I mean, we got a Roner in there. His father, Olympic silver medalist from '98. I mean, even we even got an Annan, in the female race. Her father won a Olympic silver medal, I think, in 2-man in Salt Lake City.
Well, you're actually right. We've actually got 2 Annans because in the men's field, Tim Annan, younger son, or the son of Martin Annan, and the younger brother of Deborah Annan, who races in the women's competition, is there as well. So yeah, you got a Rona and an Annan. It's 25 years, 30 years ago.
There's an Annan picture right there.
Yeah. And actually the kids both work in the family restaurant during the summer. And again, you can relate to that. You worked in the Dewdrop Inn and went to the track in the winter. So, that's very much a family relationship going on there.
Hey, so 4-man, and we only got to talk about 1 race. I mean, in Altenburg, tough track. Altenburg and Lake Placid have similar personalities.
Absolutely.
I like to say that, you go to Park City, you go to Calgary, you go to Winterberg, you go to Innsbruck, everybody's walking around up top of the track, warming up. Hey, how are you? How you doing? Nice to see you. How's it going? You go to Lake Placid or Altenburg, on top of the track, they're warming up. It's quiet. It's, it's a personality of the sport. It's a man against the mountain sport, women against the mountain sport. That was there 40, 50 years ago, Martin. And, the other thing too is the athletes, I think, have respect for the tracks.
They absolutely do. I mean, it's a fact of life. You're doing 100 miles an hour on sheet ice with no brakes. Things are going to go west in a hurry. If you make a miscalculation, if you misjudge the line, if you misjudge your speed, and they're not trying to get down safe. All right, they're not trying to wreck, but it's like NASCAR. You go to Darlington, you've got to hang it out on the ragged edge. You absolutely have to leave, everything on the table. And that's the deal with Altenberg, and it's the same deal with Lake Placid. And Altenberg is the home track for Francesco Friedrich. Guess who won the 4-man? Guess who won the 2-man? Of course, Friedrich. But it's not actually one of his more successful tracks. And actually, historically, Lake Placid has been a very bad track for results for Francesco Friedrich. In the last few seasons, he's kind of got his head around it, but it has not always gone well. It's not, he's going to rock up as cock of the walk, and this is his championship. He's going to have to fight for it, and he knows it. And one of the great things about him is that he loves the competition. Yeah, he talks about the fact that he loves having Brad there, that he loves having the Swiss, that he loves having other nations and Lochner, his own teammate, making life tough for him. Because who wants to win by a lap? Who wants to win by 5 minutes? The ones that really count are the ones where it is so tight you can barely believe you did it. Those are the ones that stick in your memory. I'm feeling Lake Placid's going to be a lot like that.
Well, you talk about the greatest of all time, Friedrich, which no doubt, but here in Lake Placid, I grew up Monty in 61, and then Wolfgang Zimmer, 69, 73, and you got into, the Andre Lange came double gold here in 2003. Meinhard Niemer, those guys here, and Eric Scher, so all the legends. And then in skeleton, Stolly, doing what he did. Then, of course, for the United States, the greatest world championship ever. Steve Holcomb won both, 2 in the 4-man event. No U.S. guys ever done that. The possession of both trophies, a historic picture of Steve Holcomb. Then, of course, in women's bob, Nikki Minicello pulled off a big upset here in 2009, winning the world championships in Lake Placid. So it's an open field, Martin, as you said. I mean, the track, I think, neutralizes everybody. Yes, I think we can say the Germans have the advantage, but I think it's going to be very interesting.
Well, one thing's for sure, when you're sliding on ice, it's never dull. And I know there'll be a lot of people who have been to the track, but there will be an awful lot of people that haven't. And maybe their only experience of bobsled has been watching Cool Runnings every Christmas or at Christmas time. I don't think there's any sport where you can be as close to the competitors as you can in bobsled, and certainly nothing moving with the speed. Unless you're, at a junior soccer match and you're right on the touchline, you're not, and even then the ball's, hundreds of feet away most of the time. But to stand by the track and watch half a ton of bobsled and man and machine come hurtling by at 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, that's something very, very visceral. This is as close to top fuel drag racing as you're going to get in a winter sport. And I can't urge you enough. Lake Placid is a fabulous location. It's a great vacation town. But the Mount Van Hovenberg track is absolutely stupendous. You will not regret a minute that you spend there.
Well, thanks for those kind words, Martin. Hey, hope you have a great holidays. We're going to do this again, Martin, as you get back into the season. We might get you out midweek from results and, as we get closer to Lake Placid. But, Martin, thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you here in my hometown.
I cannot wait. Lisa G's Monday Night Wings. We'll be there.
Thanks, Martin. Happy holidays.
You too, John. Take care.
Hey, so stay with us, folks. We're going to have more of these podcasts like this with some of the athletes, with some of the coaches as we get down on that road to Lake Placid. For more information, go to LakePlacidWorldChampionships.com for tickets and scheduling. Thanks for watching. I'm John Morgan.